Mic check 1 2 1 2. Morning. Oh man. All right, let's do it. Let me just check all. Good morning, everyone. Let me just check all the platforms real quick. Make sure we're all good to go. Facebook, let's go. Let me just check all that. Facebook, we're good. Let me go over to LinkedIn real quick and make sure to honor being interviewed by. Nice. All right. Hold on real quick. I just saw this. All right, let me just check LinkedIn real quick, and then I'm gonna check YouTube. So if you're first time here, just know, go live every Monday through Friday on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. So usually no later than 7:30 I'm live. So all right, LinkedIn, we're good. Let me just repost that. And let me go over to YouTube, make sure we're good over there, and then we could get the party started. Let's get it going. Let's get it started. Let's get it. Get it going. Let's get it. All right, here we go. YouTube, we're good. All right, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube. Good morning, or good afternoon, whenever it is you happen to be tuning into this. Let me just introduce myself real quick to anybody that may be new around here in the Move Swiftly world. My name is Aswan Crookshank. I am your one and only Move Swiftly speaker, former Division I college football player, and current 5-time, soon to be 6-time published author and educator. And what I do, what I created, what this whole business is all about is taking the lessons that you learn on the football field, the teamwork lessons that you learn on the football field, and applying them to businesses. So they have staffs, they have employees, they have people that come into their organization that move as cohesively and are as progressive and are as eager and are as hungry and as passionate as a championship high school or youth football team. That's what we do around here in a nutshell, in the Move Swiftly world. And today we are in a Tuesday, March 18th, 2025. And what we do here every single Tuesday is we break down a top 5 list. We break it all the way down. And today we are going to be talking about why history lessons, what you learn on the history side, what you teach in your schools, how you teach history, why it's so important. It's crucial. It is absolutely zero tolerance. It needs to get done. If you want to fix our education system, if you want to make it so young people are excited about the lessons, excited about the information that they're getting in their schools, you got to make your history lessons incredibly relative to them. So we're going to be diving into the top 5 reasons for that. Myself, as an educator and as a person that studied a great deal of history in college, I'm consider myself one of the few people that is an expert on this particular topic. I'm not going to call myself a history expert. I'm going to call myself more an expert in terms of how you teach history, because the way you teach it is going to incentivize folks to go and learn more about themselves, to go, get back into get a sense of their identity, get a sense of where they come from, get a sense of what they're all about in order to go and move forward and make things happen in their own lives. The kind of inspiration, the kind of inspiration that comes when you learn your history, when you make it a point to learn your history absolutely unbelievable. And as you can tell, you're speaking to someone that has kind of gone across that bridge in terms of, learning their history and things of that nature. And again, still so much to learn. Never, ever act like I know everything, because I don't. And that's the beautiful part about it. It's just an abundance amount of things, abundance amount of information that you can take that you just never know, right? So before I get into it, as you can see, I can get a little long when I get in certain topics. I can start talking a little too much, but let me get through a couple of announcements here, and then we'll get right into the topic of today's show. So first and foremost, West Palm Beach, stand up. If you are interested in free boxing lessons, just simply hit that QR code that you see right there on the screen. Let me see if I can pull up a little bit of video for you guys real quick. There's video. Just simply go to my YouTube channel, and there's a video where it's free boxing lessons, and you see kind of how we do things every 2 weeks out here in West Palm Beach, Florida. If you are interested, simply hit that QR code that you see right there on the screen, or if you're listening to this via audio, just go to freeboxing.makeyourmove.com. Next thing. Like I said, business owners, I'm here to serve you, here to work with you all and strategically create situations, implement systems that are going to allow you to have a very motivated staff. Simply go to freeguide.makeyourmove.com. That's freeguide.makeyourmove.com. And all you have to do is put in your information, and you will immediately get a free guide sent to you. I created a 10-step process in which you can start implementing and using these things right now as we speak to build out your teams. And also, final thing, Patreon. Make sure you tap into the Patreon. We have something for everybody. It's regular season, preseason, or postseason. You can get it there, or you could simply go to makeyourmove.com. All that is available right here. You can shop, join the Patreon, book me to speak, or just simply learn more about this guy named Aswan Crookshank, or learn more about the Move Swiftly podcast, the show that will continue to be the #1 podcast on innovative teamwork. New shows come out daily, all streaming too, by the way, all streaming, whatever the platform is. The Move Swiftly podcast is on there, so make sure you tap in with me there. All right, so let's get into this. Let's get into the topic of today, which is why history lessons should be relative. First and foremost, as always, let's get a full definition of the word relative, so we're all on the same page here. I'm going to pull it up right now, and then I will read it to you so you guys have a clear understanding of what it means. Relative. Let's pull it up. Let's get it all on the same page now. Relative. Considered in relation or in proportion to something else. Relative. Considered in relation or in proportion to something else. All right. So when we're talking about history lessons, and let me just give you some backstory. I have 3 stories that I want to tell you guys. I'm going to get through these stories as quick as I possibly can, but it's important that I give you backstory. And as we go about the list, I'm going to be touching on a lot of the things that I explained to you now when it comes to me and my personal history with history lessons and how it's being taught and what it's all about. And I tell people all the time that it will start with my college experience. Whenever someone asks me, hey, what you study in college and what you major in and all that kind of stuff, all those questions are very valid. They really are. They're very valid, and it's understood because, again, when you think about the way the education system is set up and how they try to put people into one category, this is their mode of study and you have to pick something, when the truth is, if you really want to be successful, you have to know a little bit about a lot. You have to really get a sense of what's going on around you, what's really the thing right now, what's really the trending thing, what's the topic, all that kind of stuff. You're not just one major and just pick that and then just blow off everything else. It's not, life doesn't work like that, right? But I tell people all the time, time that I studied sports management, but the truth is I was actually technically the degree that I got from Stony Brook University was a degree named multidisciplinary studies. All right, it's a mouthful. All right. Multidisciplinary studies was the actual degree, like the school in which I graduated from. And I tell people that I'm a sports manager major because when I remember the commencement speaker when we graduated, and he was an entrepreneur. The commencement speaker basically got up there and told us that, as a multidisciplinary studies major, we used to call it MTD major, but as a multidisciplinary studies major, you have an opportunity to go out and check out the world and figure out how to fit in many different ways. The way it works is you take 3 different concentrations, you build up enough credits, and then once you get those credits, then that turns into one major. And myself, seeing that Stony Brook was the 3rd school, it was the 3rd college in which I actually attended. Started at Carson Newman College in East Jefferson City, Tennessee. Then I went to a community college because I tore my ACL. And I was also working at a gym, and then I finished off at Stony Brook University, and I actually did some online courses too. So that's technically 4 different colleges I'm actually registered for right now. But I did get my bachelor's degree, and the concentrations that I chose were sociology, philosophy, and history. All right. And when it comes to the type of classes that I got to take, like I was able to take philosophy of sport, I was able to take sports history, and I was able to take sociology of sport and be able to connect that with certain education courses and all that kind of stuff. And basically everything that I learned in school, when it comes to all 3 of the schools, all 4 of the schools that I attended, it taught me to start picking up my own books and start creating my own content, and then, learning things that were actually interested in me, or that I was personally interested in. I tell people all the time, I read my first really enjoyed my first book. Like, I started pleasure reading even more as I was at the end of my college career because of what I was studying, what I had learned how to game. I learned how the system actually worked, right? So when it comes to how we teach these things, it was like a self-discovery. It was a discovery in itself in terms of making it relative for people. So there was a couple situations that have happened over the past week that led to this top 5 list. All right. So last week, and for those of you who don't know, I teach at this school named the Center for Creative Education. And it's the mindset of the mentality of the school, as you can tell probably by the name, is they have an art integrated curriculum, and they're always, every single project, every single thing they do. In fact, they hire separate teaching artists that come in, and it's their job to work with the classroom teacher to align some project that's going to make it so the students are being engaged in learning. Now, again, me personally, I think it's a great concept because of where I come from, but it can be new for other folks. It can be something that, if you're not someone that's a creative, or it's not someone that has been to college, if you're someone that is solely has been sold, or that traditional education process, that is something that's been beneficial to you as a parent. If that's something that you are in favor of and you don't see any need to change it, it may not be something that appeals to you, but it is important, because eventually every single young person is going to have to go out on their own and figure out how they can engage themselves, how they can creatively engage themselves in a brand new culture. All right. So anyway, last week we took the students. I primarily work with the 4th graders, so we took them to the Flagler Museum. And as I'm not sure if I did, but I might have mentioned this last. I did. I did a video. I did a video talking about the visit from the Flagler Museum, and I mentioned one of the things that I don't know if I mentioned it in that video per se, but I want to bring it up here because it led to this list, is that, as this was my first time ever going to the Henry Flagler Museum. And as I was discussing the trip with a friend of mine who has grown up in West Palm Beach, has a lot of pride in his city, has a lot of pride in terms of, where he came from and things like that. Again, football guy like me. So, wherever we come from, we understand the importance of represent where we come from and stuff like that. Is I was chatting with him after, and then he was giving me another version of what Henry Flagler was all about when he first moved here, what it was all about, this, that, and the third. And again, you can see where his version of what Henry Flagler was about versus what the tour guide was giving us was all about. And again, it led to this reason, and it led to this live. It led to the article I just put out, where when you think about how you teach history lessons, it's your job as an educator, it's your job as a business owner, it's your job as a parent, it's your job as whatever the adult in the situation that's teaching someone, that's trying to keep someone engaged. It's your job to make it relative to them. It's your job to make it so people are continuously and constantly engaged in the stuff that you're learning, so you do not lose folks. All right. So a lot of that was on my mind. A lot of that was kind of like, I was kind of moved by that. And then this weekend, I actually had some time this weekend to watch the movie 1992. All right, let me pull it up here real quick. Yeah, I finally had some time to watch this movie. It popped up on my I have the Amazon. Let me check it. The Amazon Prime thing where you get to. Yeah, Prime Video. Yeah, I have that. So, certain movies, if there's certain movies that pop up and, I may want to watch, because I remember seeing when it had first come out and seeing how emotional Tyrese got when he thought about just the idea of being able, especially someone that grew up in Cali, grew up during those times in the LA riots. And, you can go look it up. He's done tons of interviews where you see the emotion, like he gets to be that person that actually brings that story to the mainstream, bring that story to 2025 now, right? And me being born in 1989, but I was born on the East. I grew up in Silver Spring, Maryland. I heard about LA riots, but it was never at any point was it ever incentivized at all as a kid to learn more, right? To learn more about the LA riots, only thing I really heard was, oh, Rodney King got his ass whooped, and, you saw the video, and then, you heard people were rioting for that. It was a very vague lesson because there was really no incentive. There was really no incentive to actually go out, get a sense of what it was about, who was doing this, what was happening, all that kind of stuff, right? So when I watched that, I was really excited to watch that because I myself, as a grown man, there was still so much I didn't know, right? So as I watched it, I was like, man, this is exactly the way. We are in 2025 right now. This is exactly the way we should be structuring our history lessons. And again, me as a teacher, I'm constantly thinking about this stuff. I'm constantly on some, okay, how do we make it so we put this in our history books, because it was a really significant time in history. And when you see a lot of the things that were going on in the LA riots, and then you look at 2020 when they had a lot of people call it the summer of social justice, you see what happened with George Floyd, and you see a lot of these Black-owned businesses that were just being burned by our own people. See what's going on in the LA riots. Did we really know what's happening? Are we watching history repeat ourselves? How are we teaching this stuff so people don't go out into the world? We don't get kids going out into the world doing stupid shit because they don't know their history. All right, so let's get into the reasoning, because I can talk for hours on that concept alone. Let's get into the reasoning. First reason today, we're discussing why history lessons need to be relative. And by relative, it's something that is going to be relating to the actual student. This right here is reason number one. You do not know what's being enforced at the home. I'm going to let it sit. Because as we get to these points, if you're an educator that's just simply going by the book, you're going to feel like you're getting called out, which is the intention here. All right. What's being reinforced at home is why that's right there. We got to start with that foundation. All right. It has been said, and I agree with it 1000%. Racism is taught in the home. Racism is taught based on the way you are structuring your culture and the kinds of lessons, the kinds of things that you're feeding your young people. All that stuff is being enforced, and that is, excuse me, not being enforced, but it's being taught in the home. The things that you may get as an educator, or as a coach, or as a business owner, people that are coming in with a certain mentality that you're not getting, all that stuff is being taught in the home. And I can tell you from personal experience, I can tell you right now from personal experience, is that when you don't, hold on, let me pull this up here, because I have, yeah, that's it. Yeah. So when you don't know what's being enforced in the home, then this thing that I'm explaining to you when it comes to how to make history relevant, or how to really ask the questions of making history relative to young people, you start to get an idea in working with the parents on what things you can emphasize within the history lessons that you provide. So you get an understanding. I'll give you a prime example, because I consider myself incredibly blessed to have had a father that emphasized these things. My father would literally, I mean, listen, I didn't become like this overnight. Okay, people might think so, but I didn't just get like this overnight. My father would actually make me read books to him. He would actually sit down with me and make me read books line to line. And a lot of these books, like, he had a collection. He had a whole collection of I remember it was like African American stories. It was not just the mainstream folks that, the school system decides to pay attention to, but he actually had it to where these people that were just, again, great African American individuals that you would never heard about, that never made it to the mainstream. He had a whole collection of books that I would be forced to read to him directly. And, we would go over line by line. What do you see with the comma? What do you see with this? I'd miss words. And it is insane to me. Like I don't think people understand how full circle of a moment it is for me when I'm doing the same thing to the kids that I teach. I'm going line by line. If they miss a word, to the point where it's scary even to me how much more I'm sounding like him when it comes to that. All right. And when you talk about these history lessons, you got to understand it. You got to learn to work with parents. You got to learn to work with guardians. You got to learn to work with people. Or even work with the student. Really just simply ask the student, hey, what do you learn at home? What are some of the things that you would be interested in terms of what the history would be? So you keep them engaged. And right there brings me to reason number 2. What's important? What makes it important? All right, what makes it important? So if we're going to stick to the same example of my father making it so I was forced to read these books to him. I was forced to read a lot of like little short stories where they were just, again, African American first, or African American inventors, African American engineers, African American this, you name it, that's what he was making me read to him, right? And they were just simply short stories about what they were about, small things that they did. And when I got into my history classes in school and they were not talking about these people, I was reading stuff that was important at home, because, again, myself being raised in a Caribbean household, there were certain things that my father wanted me to learn going into school, that my father wanted me to know about. But when I go to a school, and I went to every type of school, I went public school, Catholic school, private school, liberal arts, again, I've been to every type of school you can imagine, which is what I alluded to earlier. Then you have to ask yourself the question of what makes it important. All right. I remember actually failing several history classes when I was in high school. And I go back and I think about it. It's not because I just didn't know. It's just these things, these people, these history lessons that most of these teachers were giving me just weren't important. They weren't important. They weren't at all related to the things that were being reinforced in the household. So reason number 1 and reason number 2 really go hand in hand. When you're talking about making a history lesson relative to the kids, relative to the people, relative to the students, it also is going to make you a better educator, make you a better communicator, make you a better leader, make you someone that's actually worth listening to, because you're giving a lesson and that you're clear on why it's important. It is just as important to tell a student, to tell an employee, to tell whoever it is you're trying to get to listen to you, why it's important that you listen to them before you go about giving that lesson. hear it, or you say it all the time. They don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. I'm going to say it again for the people in the back. They don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Okay, so they don't care about your fancy degrees. They don't care about your masters, and what you did in college, and who you know, and this person that you got, this podcast you did, this book you wrote. They don't care about that bullshit. They care. They need to know how much you care, and then they'll start to care about how much you actually know. All right, so when it comes to what makes it important, you have to be very clear as an educator. You have to be very clear as an owner. What makes it important? Why is this information important to me? And then you go about giving your lesson. See, 1 and 2 was where a lot of folks get tripped up. They get so tripped up because we are naturally born in a society. We are naturally pushed in a direction where there's this all about me culture. All right, it's all about me. You go to school and, okay, I'm going to get my degree in this so I can get this. I can get a bigger salary because everything's about me. And you get so stuck in that mentality because, again, life happens. You meet someone, you get married, you have a spouse, God forbid, you have a divorce, you have something happens in life. And at the end of the day, you're going to need the money, right? You're going to need to do whatever's going to make you the most money, which is fair and which is absolutely important because, obviously decisions and things that you made in life, you're going to need to have yourself at a certain status. I get it 1000%. But these are the things that you have to do as you attempt to take on leadership roles. All right. And if you're unable to do it, then the leadership role is not for you. Period. If you slam yourself, if you're looking at your life and looking at your situation right now, and you've slammed yourself into a situation where you're so stuck in your own mind that you can't get out of it, you are not fit to be a leader. You are not fit to be someone that is leading another individual, because just as much, I'm going to continue to repeat this point because it crosses over on so many different levels. Just as important, just as much as the lesson itself matters, is you also explaining why it's important. And I'll close you out with this example because I've been, working with a young student, a young fourth grader that I've known now for 3 years. I met her when she was like in the middle of second grade. So you're basically about approaching 3 years of me knowing her. Met her father, met her mother. Incredibly smart girl, incredibly talented. Father's an entrepreneur, man. She's actually, I haven't, gotten permission to publish it, but she's actually been sitting right here, and we did a little podcast. We did a little podcast thing and stuff like that. But she, yesterday, I was on her really hard. I was on her really bad about the math because, for the entire year, she has really been just blowing off math. And again, like me, I'm a person that hates math as well. I couldn't stand it, but I understood the importance of the logic. Again, I'm a philosophy guy. I'm a reader, history type of a guy. And thinking about math is something that I don't really like doing either until I realized how math can potentially relate to some of the work that I'm doing. How much you need this? What percentage are you going to ask for here? What's the percentage that you need in business and things like that? So when it became something in which the relative concepts of math actually taught me how exactly it's going to help me do the things that I want to do, okay, I'm going to perk up during certain math lessons that are going to be important to me. So here's what I did. And we were going back and forth, man. Like when it comes to me and the students, especially the young lady students, the young female students, man, I could tell you story after story in which we go at it. We go at it. And this has been happening since my like training fitness days. I think it's just kind of a natural thing. You get men, women, and they're always like just going at it, right? So as that kind of calmed down, and I was walking them back from snack to the classroom, I made a deal with her, and I made the class listen in on the deal. I said, all right, check it. I'm not gonna put her name out there because she's still a young student, but I said, all right, so check me out. Here's the new deal. If we ever have a situation like this in math, I want you to ask me. I want you to say, Mr. Osborne, you have to explain to me why this math lesson is important. So, let me back up a little bit initially I asked her the question is I asked her this. I said, what's a topic that you like? What's a subject that you like, right? And she was like, oh, I like art, and I like, I forgot I think art and, not mistaken, social studies, but pretty much art is her thing. Art is what she's all about. And I can respect that. Again, going to a school that's art integrated education. And that's, again, that's part of the deal here. So I asked her, I was like, okay, you like art, but you don't like math. And next time, but you have to learn math. So I said, okay, next time we have a situation in which you don't feel like doing the math and you're upset with it, which I get, because again, I'm not into math like that myself. I said to her, you have to ask me, you have to say, Mr. Aswan, how does this relate to the things I like? And I said, if you ask me that, if you just simply ask me that question, and then it's fair game. And then if I explain it to you in a manner that you understand, you got to get your work done. And made sure we shook hands, the entire class were witnesses. And from that point, even if let's say she blows off the math, let's say it's a lesson or it's something that I'm fighting, and it's like, look, she just ain't gonna do it. Even doing that, just doing and making that deal is showing her how much Mr. Aswan actually cares. All right, cares about the importance and cares about her. Now it becomes something where she cares about how much I know and how it can help and how it can relate. All right, I challenge you all. I push you all, parents, business owners, educators. I'm praying, I am pushing, I'm pleading with you. Take that approach. Learn to take that approach, because you will not believe the kind of structure, you will not believe the kind of the culture, the kind of people that you will be raising as you take that approach, because now they're listening to you. Now they're actually moved by you. Now they're actually excited to go to school. Now they're actually excited to go read. Now they're actually excited about doing things that are going to be absolutely conducive to their development, absolutely conducive to the things that they're all about. All right. So and number two brings me actually to number three: tenured mother bleeping teachers. Oh, you know what? Let me. I'm gonna pull it up. That's what I'm gonna pull up. I'll pull it up because I want to read this with you. I'm gonna read this with you so you understand everything I've said to this point and where it actually drives me crazy. All right, tenured educators. I want to pull it up. I can explain, but I want. Okay, here we go. All right, so let me pull this up. Okay. This right here is the issue. The thing that makes this issue, the thing that makes this a problem is this concept and this idea. Tenured educators, American public school teachers that are typically awarded tenure after probationary period of about 3 years. Once a teacher has earned tenure, also known as due process, he or she has a right to know why a discharge is being sought by the employer and a right to have the issue decided by impartial body. So let's just look up issue of tenure. Conditions under which land or buildings held or occupied, yeah, there it is. Holding of an office. Tenure. Right here is the issue. Okay, right here, and let me go because I'm most probably likely going to go on a rant on this. This is right off the article that I wrote. Right off the article that I wrote today. That's out right now on Medium.com. By the way, it's the issue with tenure teachers. When educators are grandfathered into a system, there's a risk that they will simply teach students to memorize facts to pass a test without adding real value. History is not taught in a way that sparks curiosity and critical thinking. Students miss out on bigger points. Teachers should be challenged to find ways to make history relevant rather than just another subject to get through. There it is, guys. That's the issue right there. Tenured teachers who will do a bunch of bullshit, and they would put it out there in a way that protects themselves. I, for the life of me, still don't understand how, multiple choice exams can exist in the whole social studies and history lessons. But here's the issue. And then this is something that needs to be addressed. And if I, again, as a person that has some political aspirations, like I was telling you a couple of weeks ago, this right here would be a really, really one of the main focuses that I really kind of put a lot of my thoughts into, put my energy into, is when you have a teacher who is also a human being, also an adult, also some person with bills. They got mortgages to pay. They got mouths to feed. They're an adult who are responsible for things that adults are responsible for. They have to make as much money as they can. They're responsible for moving up some sort of corporate ladder and getting the best job, all that kind of stuff. All right. When you have that mentality challenged with the mentality of, okay, what's going to be the best lesson for the kids? Too often are we seeing the mentality of the teacher who wants to climb a corporate ladder and get themselves a secure job. Too often do we see that mentality win. What do you mean when you say you see it win, Aswan? Okay, what I mean is when you have a teacher that instead of actually coming up with curriculum that is relatable to the students, they go off a curriculum that there's some textbook out there that the entire system goes by, the entire school system goes by, and they only use that textbook, and they just simply throw out some multiple choice tests and see who passes it. And then throughout the day-to-day, they're teaching the history in a way in which the students are required to simply memorize some facts, right? Basically say, memorize this fact or memorize this today so you get it right on the test. And then when you get it right on the test, it makes me look good because the way the system is set up is that you guys pass the test. I was your teacher. It makes me look good. I get my promotion in terms of wherever it is I want to go work and all that. And you as a student, you got to pass the test. And now you don't even have to remember it. You can just go out into the world, not really knowing what the hell it is you're doing, but you're going to go out into the world, feeling like you have achieved something because you memorized a couple facts. That's the issue with tenured teachers. Is because, again, they're moving in a direction where they're trying to get themselves some tenure. They're trying to get themselves established. They're trying to get themselves a secure job, which is, again, fair, which is exactly what a lot of adults are taught to do. No one's saying that's a wrong thing, but that concept, if you want to get in this game, if you want to get in this leadership role, if you want to get in this position, you got to think different, man. You got to think different. You got to be in a situation. You got to be the person now that decides, you know what, instead of spending a day teaching them how to memorize some stats about, since I used the example earlier, that memorize some stuff about Henry Flagler. Let me engage them a little bit. And ask them, hey, if you were Henry Flagler, if you see a situation and you see railroads being needed here, if you had all this money like Henry Flagler, what would you do? Why don't you put yourself in that person's shoes? Why don't you create stuff like that? Right? So they see themselves as these successful folks. That's when you're getting creative. That's when you start seeing students really develop and saying, look, I'm going to dive deeper into the things I'm learning. I'm going to start applying it to my own life. That's what would happen if you didn't have teachers that had the mentality of, look, that's the textbook. That's what's in that book. You need to memorize that. So I memorize it, get a C, get a B, get whatever, just pass the test so I can go move on and either keep my job or get a job that's a higher salary. And this is where this right here is where you see a lot of these issues. Okay, because you have, and I'm speaking in a general sense here, you have a ton of educators, a ton of people that has been working at the same school for decades, going off the same textbook, going off the same old nonsense. This is primarily in the public school system, which is one of the blessings for me, is that I'm not in that. So I don't know if I make my complaints known in the situation I'm in now, but I always show a great deal of appreciation for being here because it is a private school. And if there's certain things, man, look, they tell me, especially the folks that I saw, the colleagues that I have who've come from the public school system would always tell me all the time, it's like, yo, Ashwin, I know you ain't really in that. Like, I kind of fell into the education business because of the work I do with my books and all that. But I have colleagues who, they've been in it. They've been in that public school setting. They would tell me all the time, like, look, you think this, you want to complain here, man, look, you go into that public school world, you will lose your mind. So, I'm always of the person that's always showing appreciation for the situation I'm in because of the background I have in education, especially just that of as a student. All right. And I want to make sure this point drives home. This secure position or this idea of a secure job in teaching, I'm not telling you to get away from it, but I'm telling you there needs to be more of a surge and integration of entrepreneurship within our educators. All right. There needs to be an integration. It needs to be kind of a shot of entrepreneurship thinking, entrepreneurial thinking within the people that we give these education degrees to, because I'm telling you, this is the thing that absolutely drives me crazy. That's why one of the goals this year was actually not to let the employee mindset really get to me, because that's sometimes it can bother me when certain things aren't being done, and you see this and you're just not addressing it. You're just deciding, hey, I'm gonna blow. Like, all of that stuff really can absolutely drive me crazy at times. So that's number 3. Number 4, again, very, very important here, is it strengthening the family relationships. It strengthens the family relationships. All right. So I mentioned my father and him, making sure that I read those short stories and things like that about the African-American culture and what they was all about. Another story that I tell all the time, whenever this comes up. All right. This comes up. I must have been, man, I was probably somewhere early middle school, 5th grade or 6th grade. It might have been 6th grade, early middle, because I remember the topic of slavery came up after my sister taught me about it. All right. Topic of, what slavery was all about, just the concept of slavery, all of that was brought to my attention before it came up in the school system. And I'm telling you, my high school, my sister, who was in high school at the age in which she told me about slavery, my sister did a much better job than my social studies teacher in teaching me about slavery in the home. All right. Sister walked up to me. She comes up to me in my room. I'm playing video games. I'm doing what I'm doing. And my sister just walks up to me. She goes, there was a time in which, Black people weren't free. Yeah. She like, just like I'm telling you, she blindsided the shit out of me with this. So she comes up to me, and I remember it so vividly because of how just straight, like a straight shooter she was. And this is why I tell women all the time, I need women in my life that, just give it to me, direct, straight shooters and all that. So she comes to me and she goes, yeah, there was a time where Black people weren't free, and, we were all slaves, and, we couldn't do this and be this. And then she starts going in and really giving me the real. And I'm so young. I'm just like playing my video games, but I'm taking it in. And I'm like, are you serious? It got more serious as she was talking, because I thought at the time, I'm like, oh, okay, that's some heavy stuff, So again, it's your sister. Me and my sister are siblings, so we talk about everything. We say everything. We talk about a lot of stuff. But when it came up in school, and I had the opportunity to compare the way my sister taught me versus the way it came up in school, completely different. It was so watered down. It was so much about just actually, and it even drives me crazy because they play some video, they do some PowerPoint, they do some little video that doesn't really provide a whole lot of context, and it just the way it was taught. And I'll tell you a story. The reason I know this is because when I first learned about slavery in a social studies class, it was the majority of the students were black students, and there was one white boy, literally one white boy in the class, one white boy in the class. And after we watched the video, there was one of the black students was so angry. You could see it in his face. He was so angry and hurt. He wasn't like me. He didn't know about this before this lesson. And after the video stopped playing, he's like angry. He goes, it just makes me so mad. He goes, as soon as I see a white person, I'm gonna just punch him in the face. They're gonna be like, what time it is? I remember he goes, they'd be like, what time it is? I'm like, boop, right in his face. And then that happened. And then I looked at the only white boy that was in the class, and his face was just like, scared to ask a question. Again, who wouldn't be in his situation, right? And it was all based on the way it was taught. It was never mentioned. It's never mentioned, hey, look, we've grown from that. We have moved on from that. We are now in a situation where we're all able to do a lot of different things. So let's not go about this specific lesson on slavery and then now just say, okay, we just hate every white, because that's going to get you nowhere. That's not the way to go about it, right? And when you're talking about making things relative in terms of the history of it, like me and my sister, we have tons of, actually, we grew up in the suburbs, so we tons of white neighbors and things like that. So when she was teaching me that, it was like, okay, it felt you felt a kind of a stain, you felt a certain way, but more so you realize, hey, things aren't like that now, though. And then there was growth there was strength there was a bond that my sister and I were created, that, and to this day, I don't know if it was my mother that actually, knowing who my mother is and know what she's all about, it's very possible that my mother was the one that told her to do it, but I'm not gonna say that I know for sure. At the same time, we were able to have a bond with each other in that moment, that I could bring her on right now and she would tell you the exact same story. She would tell you the exact same moment. She would tell you the exact same situation. This is exactly the way it went down. I'm giving a firsthand experience about how it went down and how just that can strengthen these relationships, and the way we grew up and the way things happen, throughout life and all that. Tell people all the time that's there's a bond there that can't be broken because of what was taught in the home and because of the things that were taught there. So I strongly recommend you do it because of the strengthening of the family bonds. Now, final thing, number 5. This is huge. You avoid repeating history. This is where things get really, really uncomfortable. Okay, this is where things get really, really uncomfortable. I don't give a shit who you are. All right, if you are a human being, you've made some mistakes. Okay, I don't give a shit who you are, how old you are when you're listening to this, or where you're listening. However, if you're a human being, you've made some mistakes, and you do not make the mistake of not telling another person about those mistakes because you've gotten so much in the habit of covering shit up. You do some dumb shit, right? And you decide, I'm going to bury that because it wasn't that catastrophic. I'm going to bury that. I'm not going to tell my kids about it. I'm not going to tell the young people about the mistake that I made personally. And then you see a young person going down that same path, making the same mistake that you made because they didn't realize that it was actually a mistake. It was actually something that they could have been avoided because you didn't explain the mistakes. When you make history relative, okay, it almost forces you to start telling young people, hey, I'm not perfect. I done did some shit, man. I done did some that, and speaking for me personally, I did a lot of stupid shit, right? Did a lot of dumb things that I would want a young person to know about, especially if you're talking about young person. The reason I made this the thumbnail today is because this right here, this little boy right here, that's my nephew. That's my nephew right there. That's my nephew, and I want him to know. I want him to know all these books I wrote, and that's actually right there is Marshall Montana, his dad, his Mr. Monty, and right there's my sister. Actually, I knew I was going to be talking about her, and this is her son, and family history and all that, just to give you guys a little context in terms of why I made this the thumbnail. But yes, I want my nephew knowing about all the mistakes that his uncle made so he can avoid making those mistakes. When you make history relative, all right, this is with everything: business owner, parent, teacher, coach, educator, whatever it is, wherever you land in that world. Again, we're speaking primarily, and for those of you who don't know, primarily over here in the Move Swiftly brand, the Move Swiftly world. We speak to those four categories, we speak to those four people, those leaders of people. Again, business owner, coach, parent, educator. Those are the four angles of the four folks that I look to attract into my world. You gotta let it go. You done made some mistakes. You're a human being. Let it go. Explain the mistake. Be willing to explain the mistake to whoever is willing to listen so they don't do the same thing. All right. I'll just close you out with this example. And I remember telling my nephew that I remember having the conversation, man. The conversation when my nephew must have been he wasn't even 10 years old yet. Might have been approaching. He was somewhere in elementary school, and now you're starting sports. And at that age, you seeing what kind of competitor he is. You seeing what kind of dog he got up in him. Right? Again, me and my sister, we grew up in that sports culture. This is us too. This is after we won a championship game in 2002, and you see us two there. She was there for all the games and all that. So when it came to my nephew, now it was like, yo, you, hey. You've been indoctrinated in the sports culture, so you got to be a dog. You got to be a dog, right? So I remember I just moved to Florida maybe about 7 years ago. I just moved to Florida, and now my nephew is really getting into sports, and he's playing basketball. He's doing his thing, and you got to understand, I know my sister better than any male out there, all right? And she calls me. She goes, yo, Judah's out there balling, man. Judah's out there doing this. He's doing this. He's stealing. He's throwing layups. He's doing this. Like, she's like, you could feel the energy over the phone. Like, she's like, yo, I'm telling you, he is doing his thing, right? And then I remember another conversation that we had. I'm like, all right, so Judah, make sure you don't make my mistake, which is I was only playing one sport. I was literally, at his age, I was literally focused on one sport. All right. And I was like, yo, don't make that mistake. Get into some boxing, get into some soccer, do some basketball, do this, do that. Just make yourself an overall athlete. And I remember hearing my sister over the phone say, see, that's the way it works. You need to be better than your uncle. You need to be doing stuff that is completely makes you a better athlete. That's the way that it works. And then you see, if you go look at him now, look, he's absolutely crushing it, absolutely balling, and he hasn't even gotten to high school yet. And he's in the DMV. DMV, again, that pride thing that I was talking about with Ann when it comes to West Palm Beach. That's pride right there. That's pride right there. All right. So that's what it's all about. Again, there's so many positives, so many benefits to making a history lesson relative that I can go for another 2 hours if I wanted to. But in terms of the top 5 reasons, the main things that we got to take away from today is number 1, again, you never know what's being reinforced in the home. You just do not know what's being reinforced in the home. So you got to use the history lesson to really gauge how exactly you should structure your lesson plan, structure what's important, structure how you're going to teach it, structure all that stuff. And that brings me to number 2. Now, what is important? What's important in terms of what we're actually teaching and how we're actually teaching it, as opposed to just, again, like the typical tenure teacher. They just want folks memorizing stuff so they can get a certain grade on a test and they can keep their jobs and all that other bullshit that comes with, a lot of educators and how they go about living their life and why the education system is the crap show that it actually is. And again, we have an obligation to fix that. Number 4, it strengthens those family relationships. Like I mentioned, it was my sister who actually taught me about slavery way before it actually came up in the school system. And number 5, you avoid repeating those things if you got it, but you got to be honest about it. You got to be very honest and open about the mistakes that you've made, and you've made a ton of them. If you're a human being, you've made a ton of mistakes. All right. It's got to be very open and honest about those mistakes. So when the young people hear the mistakes that you made, they can go about it and say, okay, look, I'm going to do it better. I'm going to do it differently because so-and-so told me that, hey, they made this mistake in the past. All right. So all that being said, again, to dive deeper into everything I'm doing, to dive deeper into all of my work, to bring me out and all that, I need you to go to makeyourmove.com. That's makeyourmove.com. You can go shop there. You can join the Patreon, book me to speak, and just simply learn more about that as one Crookshank guy, that one and only Move Swiftly speaker guy. Yeah, simply go there, makeyourmove.com. Everyone out there, continue to move swiftly. We will talk more soon.